had one game that I did against a Vanessa Rogue where I should have left earlier probably, so it's a little bit my fault, but I went to Fatigue. My deck tracker for their side was like filling the entire screen vertically. It looked like I had opened like 100 Chrome tabs because they were just like tiny little boxes for every card they generated, and it puts like a little gift symbol on each one that wasn't in their deck, so there's like gift symbols all the way down. I posted that in the salt mine, like, why? Welcome to episode 555 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Friday, July 17th, 2026 in the evening. Coming to you from Teldrassil, California, it's me, Magesa. From Northern Massachusetts, we have WickedGood.
Hi.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. This week's episode is brought to you by our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Jeremy T., Bottle Caps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, May, NY Kiwi, Spine, Crisley Bear, and by our patrons of the week, Wadeo and Fog Fanatic. You can go to patreon.com/CoinConcede to get perks like a thank you at the top of the show, bonus post-show content, early access to new episodes, and help support the show in the process. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And I'm sure you have noticed that I am not Edelweiss. Unfortunately, Edelweiss has a number of things going on related to the smoke and fire situation in much of the eastern US. She's okay, but inconvenienced, shall we say. So hopefully we will have her back next week. She also has to prepare for casting for playoffs on Sunday. So if you are watching this live or on the raw audio, playoffs, Sunday, watch them.
Get a pack. You get packs when you do that.
You get packs.
Like they have Twitch drops, so it's not, like it's not just for them, it's also for you. If you want more packs, go do that. So yeah, the smoke is wild. Like we got some of it in not nearly as bad as it is further north, but we got some of it in Massachusetts, and like everything on, I think it was Wednesday, because these are from the Canadian wildfires, and the air quality was really bad even here, like well far away from it, and everything looked like it was through a sepia filter. It was the weirdest thing. Like everything looked like an old-timey movie. Just very yellow, and like the sun looked really weird. It had like this weird haze on. It looked like something like out of a video game, like some sort of like an apocalyptic video game, atmosphere or something like that. Like some like one of like the tense parts of Final Fantasy VII Remake or something. Like it was really bizarre.
A few years ago, it was like that in California, and like the sky was like literally dark orange. And I tried to take a photo and send it to people who weren't in California, and like I couldn't properly convey it because the iPhone automatically color corrects.
Yeah, I had that same problem. I was trying to take a picture of like the sunrise when my daughter was driving me to work, or driving me to the train station. So I had my phone. She's like, "You should take a picture," and I'm like, "Well, I'm trying, but it looks normal when I take the picture. So it's no good when I try to do that." But
yeah, you have to like edit the photo until it looks right, and then be like, "I know it's edited, but this is what it looks like."
Yeah, but so Edel is staying away from the smoke today, and hopefully that will clear up for her, and we'll have her back next week. But yeah, we had a whole lot of. I guess I can go first because I mean we were recording on Friday. We were going to be recording yesterday, just the two of us, because it was the same situation, except that half an hour before we were going to start recording, my water heater sprung a leak, and that's not fun either. I've spent the last 24 hours hunched over a shop vac, vacuuming water off of my basement floor, and then subsequently loading a whole bunch of stuff into a dumpster that was ruined by it's mostly cardboard. I don't want to, like, we didn't lose all of our worldly possessions in this water heater leak. Like, don't worry. Like, most of the important stuff was like either well far away from it or like upstairs. But like there was just like boxes and like stuff like that, like that was near it that ended up getting wet, that we had to then drag upstairs. Or like there was like leftover carpet from when we moved into the house. There was like a swatch of carpet from the living room that was like extra that they left in the, I guess they do that. They left it in the basement for us, I guess, in case we wanted to replace a patch. I don't know why, but I guess it's our carpet. We bought it at the time. I don't know, but so like that we got all wet. We had to schlep that up the stairs and get rid of that. So it was just like very annoying. I have a whole lot of muscles that hurt in places that I forgot I had muscles. And I didn't get to take a shower until about an hour ago when the heater was replaced and finally like turned on, and it takes like an hour for hot water to come back on. So yeah, so it was today was a day, and it was a very fun. I would have much rather been talking about Hearthstone 24 hours ago, but we're doing it now. So maybe this is just kind of repentance for what I've been doing to people for the last week.
Great segue.
I will say, of the last like day or so, you've convinced me to go over to the Soothsayer Priest, and I'm much happier. And I've gotten up to a decent win rate with the Soothsayer Priest. I'm at like 62%, like 21 and 13 at Legend.
Nice. Like
I'm hanging out like 2,500 Legend, which is good for me for this time of the month. But yeah, it was a little bit of a rocky start, but it got much better. Once I figured out that you can just like stick a Soothsayer and then hold them off on it and then put Schism on it and then just dome them for 13. That's not something you get to do a lot as a control deck. So I was enjoying that. And like some of the games go long, but then you have the quest if you really need it. And like even the hexes, I haven't run into as many hexes as I thought I was going to. Maybe that's just because of like the ranks that I'm at, but it hasn't felt like as dangerous to get hexed as one would think that it would.
Yeah, and VS recommended only one hex in their list on Thursday, so that has been helpful in that I'm seeing fewer hexes, and I think there isn't like a critical mass of the priests to encourage the shamans to run more hexes. But it's not necessarily good for them like in the mirror necessarily, or also if you think they are running hex and you put the elusive on your Soothsayer, like
you can't always do that.
You can't always, but don't forget that the elusive half is there. It's not always correct to copy. Sometimes it's correct to make it so they can't target. Also versus warriors, they can't torch it if they can't target it. So, if they have a bunch of stuff on the board.
They also can't torch it if it's got 13 health and they've got a 1 damage ping. Like that's also a thing.
True.
But
yeah,
and once I kind of figured out that you don't actually need to like rebuild, like get the halves of the schism together, like they're both fine as individual halves, then it got a lot easier for me to win with the deck. So I've been enjoying that. But before that, we were both playing Mug Shaman. We thought we were going to be doing a deck guide on Mug Shaman, which we kind of sort of are, but not really. We all kind of collectively agreed after playing it for a while that it was not really a deck that we could do a lot of great deck guide on, just because so much of it is generated. We're going to talk about it in a different way in Dexplanations, but I did have one game where I sent to our group chat, like, I want to turn myself in for murder, because it was just like it started with Blazing Invocation, which it always, like, all the crimes seem to, like, Blazing Invocation is like the candlestick with Colonel Mustard in the billiard room. Like, that's the candlestick. It's always the murder weapon. But I'd gotten a Blazing Invocation, which had given me Ember Scarred Whelp, which is the 3/2 that says discover a 5-cost card, gain 1 mana crystal next turn only. So it both ramped me the following turn and gave me access to an Earthen Drake, which is the 5 mana 4/4 at the end of your turn, deal 4 damage to the enemy hero. That's real good on turn 2.
Yeah.
That lived for the rest of the game, which sounds like a lot, except the game was only 4 turns. Because I somehow got a Primordial Lord, which is like the 7/6 battle cry, get a random Colossal minion from the past. I never cast the Colossal. It didn't matter because it was just a 7/6. And between like the Drake hitting them with its face and then hitting them at end of turn, it was just over in turn 4. And it's like, you sometimes have those games, and sometimes you have the games where you don't get anything for the first 2 turns. You spend 20 minutes playing with arena commons and trying to find a way to win. And like, I understand that kind of randomness is skill testing. I'm not saying that it's not, but it's also like, I kind of like to have a game plan other than mulligan for these couple of broken cards that you really want on turn one and then hope that they carry you. Like, that feels to me like that's basically like Mountain Map and Blazing Invocation. Like, you just hard mull for those. And then I think that's what Vicious Syndicate said in the report too, that like even low security wing, it's not good because it's not getting you something you can play on one and just start with tempo. You still, I mean, I guess it could if you're on the coin, because then you could coin something, but it's not as good because you have to do something first. Whereas Blazing Invocation and Mountain Map, just like, okay, here's a 2-drop on turn one, and it just goes off from there, or a 3-drop on turn one if you're talking about Blazing Invocation. Oh, and by the way, it has a battle cry, so it's going to do something. But if you don't have those, it can feel really slow, and if you fall behind, then you're just like, well, I've got all this junk that I made. I guess I'm going to take lemons and make lemonade. And sometimes you make lemonade, and sometimes you make like clam juice, which is, I think some people enjoy clam juice, but I don't like drinking clam juice. So
I had a similar experience with Mug Shaman. I had some games where I did crimes. Shortly after Wicked posted that he wanted to turn himself in for murder, I said, me as well, because I had a 5-turn game, oh my gosh, so slow, where I played Blazing Invocation on one, got Circadiamancer, which is a 3-mana 2/2 that says battle cry, add a random 8-cost minion to your hand at the start of your turns, reduce its cost by 1. And it gave me an Illidari Inquisitor that I domed them with like on 4, and then it lived, and then I domed them again on 5, and then they died. So, of course I had also drawn Static Shock, right? So I could get the extra attack with it.
Oh, of course.
Of course. It was versus the Priest. I did not need Hex for their Soothsayer in that particular game. But I think this is a good example of where like an individual's experience is not necessarily the same as the stat sites with your performance with decks. Yeah. I have been performing considerably better with the Soothsayer Priest than I did with the Mug Shaman. Even though all stats say that on average, Mug Shaman is by far the better deck. And like, I'm sure that's true for most people. And there's also variance, right? Like, I didn't play a ton of games of the Mug Shaman, so sometimes things even out, especially with a deck that is so high variance. I also, I just wasn't enjoying it nearly as much, and so we decided that we would do other things. I, of course, had been like, we should talk about the Soothsayer Priest for our explanations, but cooler heads prevailed. But that is maybe not the best first explanations of the expansion. That's not just a meta report. But I will say I've had a lot of fun with the deck. I had one day where I was doing badly, but I've won my way back up into top 300 at the moment. I have like a 58% win rate with it or something like that over 50-ish, 60-ish games. With my latest list, more games if you count the previous ones. Right now I'm running the same as VS, except for instead of the Jailbirds, I'm running Shadow Word Ruin. I think that's kind of just like a meta call for whatever you're seeing, and also how much you like your emotional support Shadow Word Ruin. It's useful for
it's it comes in handy occasionally, especially against the Egg Warriors. It's pretty good.
Yes, and it can be helpful against Jade Guardians with rogues. If you happen to run into any druids, it's helpful versus druids. Occasionally you can use it to kill off your own minions, because sometimes you actually need the healing from the Soothsayer versus like a Hunter, because they can just damage you over the top. And advice for facing Hunter: try not to get too low. Normally you're kind of using your health as a resource with this deck, like you are kind of taking slow early turns because you're going to heal back up with Soothsayer, and or the hold them off, which is the give it +5/+5 in lifesteal. But you have to be a little careful versus Hunter, because they can just burn you over the top and not kill your Soothsayer. So do watch out for that, especially if they really kind of know what they're doing. If you are playing Hunter against a Priest, keep that in mind. You might be able to not push board and get over the top. Especially, I had one game where they got that Wasp. That's like the 2/7 Garishi Wasp or something like that.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah.
That every time it's damaged, they get a Garishi Stinger, which is the 1-mana deal 2 and summon a 2/1 rush. They got it damaged like multiple times, and then they play Neri, and then they were all doubled to my face.
Oh, the stingers got doubled. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
I still wasn't dead. I killed the Neri, then they confront the Tolveard, and they all got replayed. So yeah, that was their crime against me. But yeah, overall, the priest is fun. You do want to really mull for Soothsayer. I will say, if you're somebody who like you can win without it in the mull. Like, don't just concede. But it is a lot easier if you have it in the mull. Or, you know, you can look for it with Portal of Vanguard. You can look for it with Xavius, which is more reliable, of course. But you do want to try to draw and get to it if possible. You're also trying to complete the quest.
Even Intertwined Fate can find it sometimes. It's not as reliable also because it's looking through your whole deck, but you still get 3 shots at it. So Intertwined Fate isn't a bad way to look for it if if all else fails.
Yeah, I don't have that in my list, but I think it can be. It's definitely like on the list of cards that could be in it. I had been playing, I think you also have Ritual of Life. I hadn't been playing that at first, and I put it in, and that's good just to have a little early board.
Yeah.
And one game, I got an Egg of Kalos that carried me against a rogue because when they Lotus Troublemaker, it just pops you the egg. And then I ended up with, they kept getting taunts. Like, they just kept getting a lot of like little 1/3 taunts. Like, they got multiple of that Death Knight 8/8 taunt that summons a bunch of 1/3 taunts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'd already used my Medivh's Triumphs. You have to keep Medivh's Triumph versus Rogue because of Vanessa. Like, Medivh, like basically Soothsayer, Medivh's Triumph, that's your mull. So I couldn't get through all their little taunts very effectively. But I had managed to get a put together schism, so elusive and copy, on my 2020 taunt. And I'd also gotten to hold them off on it first. So I had 2 like 27 attack, 28 health, elusive lifesteal taunts that they could not deal with. They were like frantically trying to generate like a Shadow Word Ruin or something, and they, luckily for me, did not succeed. So I finally was able to connect face.
Sometimes just making like a giant Soothsayer just like wins. It's like that's all you need sometimes, is that'll just win on its own. And like even if they can kill it, like they often have to put so many resources into it to kill it that you just end up like grinding them out anyway, and it's fine.
Like, yeah, you can kind of, sometimes you have those blowout games where you have a big one early. Sometimes you can go long. You have a lot of healing. You do have to kind of think about like, how am I using my Umbra if I'm going long? Because then you do kind of want to pivot to the game plan with the quest reward. But in general, Umbra, like it's okay if you generate some death rattles in most games into your pool, because like you usually don't have 5 Soothsayers dying anyway. Like it's all right. And occasionally there's a good death rattle. Like I got the 2/4 dragon that death rattle draws you a 5 or higher cost spell, and I was like, great. I haven't found my Medivh's Triumphs, but now I have. Like, so like you can get interesting things off Ritual of Life.
Yeah, you just have to be careful with that if you're planning on playing on Death Sentence, because
that
sometimes
is the one place where
like on Death Sentence, because like I had a game today where the Soothsayer gave me the Light Shower Elemental, and then I played on Death Sentence and I looked down at my board and nothing was there. I'm like, wait, what? And then I had to go back and look, like, oh yeah, I forgot about the Light Shower Elemental. But like the only, like, sometimes the 6 drops will get generated and you'll just get one and it's not the end of the world. I think if you're playing Ritual of Life and you're discovering, you want to be mindful that some of them have death rattles and you may not want those again. And so that's something that you need to be a little bit careful about, because like it's instinct, right? Because if you're getting a 2/3 copy of whatever you're summoning, you want that to do something. And the way it's going to do something if you're summoning it is by a death rattle, but sometimes you just don't want that death rattle in the pool. So
yes, you do have to have that extra like decision moment for sure. And one other thing to remember with it, you do have a tiny bit of burn with the Holy Embrace / Shadow Embrace second side of it, and you do have Ruby Sanctum, and you do have a hero power that does too. I have killed people with the hero power before, or killed a minion that needed killing. So like, check for lethal as usual, right? That's a small thing. You can kill off your own quest rewards with Medivh's Triumph or Shadow Word Ruin sometimes if that's going to be lethal. But careful about that if it's not going to be. So yeah, it's a fun deck in my opinion. Again, like, will your experience listener be the same as ours. Not necessarily, right? It depends on kind of what you mesh with. And I will say you can just have like brick games where you just like only draw Undeath Sentence, Schism, and like Kalia, and nothing gets you a
nothing else.
Soothsayer and no Soothsayers. Like that does happen sometimes. So if that's gonna like tilt you off the face of the planet, keep that in mind. But I have enjoyed it.
I think it is like, I mean, I was looking through my replays. I've played a bunch of shamans and I've only lost to one of them. So like the stats that are in VS are definitely average, but I think that like I've played a lot of this style. Like this is Big Priest. This is another version of Big Priest. And I've played a lot of, like, I wrote a guide on original, like, God, what even set was that? The Knights of the Frozen Throne Big Priest, like the first version back when it came out, back when it was actually a control deck. Like the thing that you need to also be paying attention to when you're playing this deck is you really need to use your life as a resource and conserve your removal. Like if you're responding to a flashback on turn one with the Medivh's Triumph, you're probably losing that game. Like you probably need to be willing to take at least a little bit of damage from the flashback, let them develop a little bit more into it, and then blow it away. Or like you're not responding to like the first Herald from a Mug Shaman. You need to let them play some more stuff onto the board and then remove that whole board, and not just respond to like the Herald, Soldier, and one Elemental. Like if you do that, you're gonna lose. So like that's the kind of thing that like you're gonna listen to us. Like there's a whole just kind of mentality to play and control that goes into it. And like, I know that's why I've been more comfortable, because that's just where my brain works. Like I'm not necessarily thinking about how to squeeze every ounce of, power out of a board to play aggro. I'm thinking about how to use my resources to flip the board and then get into a controlling state. So that's where that's a little bit better. It's suiting my skill set a little bit better, but I also think that there's a valid thing to be said for like what the stats sites show is the average. And this is true for pro players in particular. Like they will sometimes bring a deck that is objectively bad, but they have a lot of reps on it. And like, I think Lorinda says this a lot during the broadcast, like the stats do not matter if someone is the best at the world, because their experience is going to be very different playing a deck, and they may get 5 to 10 percentage points on any given matchup more than the average person, because they're just better at the game, right? So that's something just to keep in mind. Now, again, you listener, I mean, you could be, I don't know if Pocket Train listens or not, but like you're probably not, the best who's ever lived, the best who ever was,
And we're not either, to be clear.
Yeah, neither. I certainly am not. I'm well past my prime. But, I think it's worth at least understanding what your skill set is, I think is the moral of the story. Like if you know a deck really well, or a play style really well, even if that play style is not well positioned on average, you can turn that into an advantage for you by leveraging your skills. Like it's not just the deck, the pilot also does matter.
Yes. And I have been sort of rediscovering, it's weird because like we're in such an aggro meta, and somehow I'm like, therefore I'm going to rediscover my more controlling side. You can beat people down with the Soothsayer Priest, and you should look for lethal. But it is more of a like, use your health as a resource type of deck as well. I mean, we don't know what's going to come in balance. We're coming up on 2 weeks from expansion launch, which is when they said their window was. So another reason why we decided not to talk about Mug Shaman directly was we don't know how hard they're going to hit it. I'm assuming they hit it. I feel like it's not a super big stretch to say it's likely to be hit.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But we don't know if that's going to be like a tap or a bludgeon. So,
I mean, when Vicious Syndicate gives something a 100 power score, that's generally going to be on the balanced team's radar. Not the Vicious Syndicate said it, but like if Vicious Syndicate is seeing it in their data, the balanced team I'm sure has the same data that they're seeing, and they are going to probably react to it for sure.
They have even more data. They can tell It'll be in there. We don't know how much else is going to be in there. We're not going to spend a bunch of time speculating about balance. You, listener, will find out soon enough, especially if you're not listening to the raw audio.
And before we go on to news, just one quick word of warning, because I donated some MMR, so you don't have to. I was on Reddit, I think on Wednesday, and saw multiple unique posts about a Mill Paladin. So this is using Beatrix and putting prize vendor in the army slot so that you get 10 prize vendors. And then the idea is that you play prize vendor, you play the aura that summons a 2-drop, you get more prize vendors. And because you have 10 more cards than your opponent, you should then be able to Umbra. They draw a bunch of cards, and you also draw a bunch of cards, but you have more cards in your deck than they do. So then they die. And I am here to tell you that does not happen as much as you would like to think it does. And you do have enough tools to be able to like grind out to that point. Like there's a lot of equality consecration combos, because like if you're running the aura, you also have manifested time ways that you can combo with an equality. You've also got the dragon that sets all the attack or health of the minions to 1. Like there's a lot of ways that you can do equality. Queers is also running Wild Pyro, because why wouldn't you? There are also a bunch of decks that shuffle stuff into their libraries and then you just die and you have no win con. So yeah. And the ones that don't are probably killing you faster than you can do what you want to do. So just take it from me. I played 2 games. That was plenty. And I should have known that a deck with that many Murlocs was kind of fishy, but it is what it is.
Yeah, we've had people talking about that in our Discord too. Panacea, for example, who's a very high-ranked player in our Discord, not a pro player, but like up there. They said that they made it a little better by making it a tempo deck with dudes that then also had a bunch of prize vendors, but you're better off just playing the standard pure paladin, either with or without Beatrix, if that's what you're doing, or just like aggro paladin. All of that will be better than this, unless you really, really want to do this, I guess. It does exist.
I mean, as much as we just said, the standard that the stat sets don't always tell the story, but also the stats sites, or at least HS Guru says that Mill Paladin has a 32.1% win rate Diamond through Legend over the past week, which is real bad. So
yeah, if you see something like 45 or above, it's going to depend partly on your pocket meta, your playstyle. If you see something 40 to 45, like maybe you see something in the 30s, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough no matter who you are, most likely.
Yeah, it's even worse. At Legend, it's 28.6. That's not good. Don't do that. That's Ticketus Warlock numbers. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, but people played Ticketus Warlock. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well,
I know that because I ran into them.
Yeah, so did I, because I was playing Priest and I was upset.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
so
and people are playing Warlock now, and that's still better than Mill Paladin. So we do have a little bit of news, some actually kind of substantial news. And then we're going to talk about how to deal with randomness. There's a lot of random generation, a lot of random rolls. It feels like even higher than normal. And there are some decks like the Mug Shaman that are fairly reliant on random generation for the way that their deck plays out. And that can take some adjusting your mindset, both if you're playing as the deck and if you're playing against the deck. So we figured rather than talking about any one of those specific decks, I think talking about that as a general thing may just be something that maybe you will help you kind of reframe how you're doing that. But we're going to get there in a minute. Let's talk about some of this news.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So first of all, if you are watching us live or you are listening to the Patreon raw audio, the summer playoffs are this weekend. It's going to be Swiss for all 3 regions. That's going to be off stream Saturday and Friday, but Sunday will be the top 8 for all 3 regions. And when I say that, it's not all 3 regions together. Each region is going to have a top 8. As a reminder, the playoffs are made up of the top 50 point earners for the summer competitive season, which is May and June, the top 4 players from each open qualifier during the summer competitive season, and the winner of each of the Summer Blitz weekend tournaments, which is like an open tournament that's the week before play. I think it's the week before playoffs. This is the last open competitive period before Worlds at BlizzCon. I believe there's a last chance tournament after this for people who have already qualified into one of these that we'll hear about. And we're also going to have Summer Championships coming up soon. The top players from this will play in Summer Championships coming up soon. You will be able to get an Escape from Violet Hole pack by watching on Twitch for an hour. There will be some folks that are co-streaming as well, so you don't necessarily have to watch the main stream, but Edel is casting on the main stream, so go do that. And so we'll see who's going to be qualifying for Summer Championships after this weekend. That'll be exciting. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to Edel about that and talk about what she saw and what we can expect when Summer Champ starts, when she's back next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise. So that is that. We did get a hotfix patch on July 16th, which is yesterday. The main highlight of this is that Slag Claw is unbanned. They fixed its extra Kindred triggers when its battle cry was being doubled by Mug Z. So I have definitely seen some Z Shamans today as a result of this. The Slag Claw is still good. It's just not broken.
Slag Claw does seem like it still goes in the deck because it still does quite a bit of damage, but not nearly quite so much damage as it was doing before. It's an interesting idea to run the 3/2 Murloc that doubles Kindred so that Slag Claw still doubles its Kindred with a double battle cry. That is an interesting idea. That seems effective. There's a number of other things in here that are important. They definitely do go look at this. For example, we had mentioned last week that there was what we thought was probably a bug where you could play Quest Shaman with Z Shaman, like that, because the quest was in your opening hand, it wasn't counting it. That was indeed a bug. It's not like that deck was like a meta breaker. I don't think they were like, oh, we have to fix this because it's a meta breaker. It's just, it's too weird an interaction, like sort of too clearly a bug, I think. So they fixed that, but it is unfortunate for those who were enjoying the deck. And they also had a few other things. Mugsy's Battlecry doubling hero power no longer keeps its effect after your hero power is replaced, so don't play Imbue Shaman either.
I mean, or Deathwing, right? I think Deathwing would probably be the most likely because with Z Shaman you're playing Heralds, so you could Deathwing, get the 5 attack hero power, and then still be able to double things. So because it's a passive, so you don't have to click it, so it would just still do that. So yeah, so I think I don't know that playing Deathwing is necessarily 100% incorrect, but be aware of what you're doing if you play Deathwing in that deck, I guess, is really the moral of the story here.
Be aware of your timing. Captured Archmage now correctly activates after 4 deaths when triggered by another card, such as Endbringer Umbra. So I guess that would be important for any deck that's doing that. Judgment now resolves correctly when cast by a non-player like Azvedon the Grand Shield. Azalina Soulsever no longer copies the wrong player's version of cards in mirror match situations.
Oh
That's
god,
funny.
Oh my god. That's like my nightmare. So you queue into another First of all, I'm surprised that they were able to find this because that would require 2 people playing Azalina at the same time. Yeah. just on ladder playing Azalina at the same time, let alone queuing into each other. Right? And then, oh my god, so then they would copy. Oh, that hurts my head. No, like just play Soothsayer. Don't do that to yourself. Like, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Lotus Troublemaker and Jade Guardians will no longer count cards played using health instead of mana as cards played for 2 mana. So that's relevant for that Murloc, that 2 mana Murloc that says your next Murloc costs health instead of mana.
Yeah.
I've still been seeing people play it because it's just another thing on the board and it's helpful for Vanessa, I guess. But it will no longer be a tick for Jade Guardians on Lotus Troublemaker. I'm not sure if it's still correct.
Yeah. There's also sometimes there's like a Death Knight card that your neck, like discover a spell, it costs health instead of mana, that sort of thing. Like there's other ways that you can pay health for cards in that deck. And I think that's a good change. I mean, it's not going to make that much of a difference in the in the power level of the deck, but it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, and it does say, as someone pointed out in our chat last week, it does say pay 2 mana on the card.
Yes.
It didn't just say pay 2. Tiny Powell no longer gets a bonus from ammunition when first randomly equipped by another effect, such as Stadium Announcer. I heard someone talking about this in the Discord. It was getting the freeze effect by default.
Oh.
So now it does not get an effect if it was equipped by Stadium Announcer or a similar effect. Until you attack with it, then you get to choose.
So it's just a vanilla weapon until the first time you attack, and then it'll offer you an ammunition after that.
I believe so, yeah. And Godfrey the Betrayer now properly shows both players the history tile for cards revealed by its overdraw effect. I'm not sure how it was doing that before because I've not been playing Godfrey, but I'm sure that is helpful. I'm also sure that Godfrey is still terrorizing Wild, but I'm sure they're aware of that as well. And there's a couple other things, so do go give that a look, but all in all, a pretty big hotfix, and I guess I can see why, therefore, it took a little while to get Slug Club back, because if they were doing it with this many other fixes, that would, in fact, take a second.
Yeah, and they're not going to do these like onesie twosie, right? They're going to batch them up and then do it all at once. So that all makes sense. So yeah, it was a pretty substantial hotfix. So you should have that in the client already, but just do be aware of all of those things, and especially if you were playing one of those decks that was affected. The other big news this week is that we heard from, this is based on a post on LinkedIn, that Tyler Bielman, who is I guess I should say was the game director for Hearthstone, is no more. He is retired. Is now the former game director for Hearthstone. You've seen him in some of the Dev Insights videos over the last couple of months. The post says, retired, what does that mean really? I know I have the tired part figured out. It means I have resigned from Blizzard after 3 incredible years with no full-time job on the horizon. It means I'll have more time for my health, my relationships and passion projects. For clarity, my choice was completely independent of any larger situations with Microsoft or Blizzard. The timing's a little awkward, and I know this is a very difficult time in our industry, and my heart goes out to those impacted. There are too many folks to thank individually because there are a lot of them. If you're reading this, like you're one of them, so thank you. So long story short, he was not laid off as part of the larger layoffs going across Xbox in general, but he also isn't going somewhere else. He's just no longer with the team. So I think like 3 years as in that position is, and really would have translated to like 2 years of sets, because generally the team works a year out. So if he was the game director for 3 years, he would have been responsible for the last 2 years worth of sets, not 3. I'm sure there are a lot of, you can kind of come to your own conclusions about what that means in terms of how those last 2 years worth of sets have gone. But, it'll be interesting to see who they decide to fill. There was we were looking at this, I think it was last week, right? That we were looking at this. We decided not to talk about it just because we weren't really sure what to make of it. So we didn't really want to start just wildly speculating. But there was a posting that was put up on Blizzard's career site looking for a game director for Hearthstone. And we kind of looked at that a little bit weird. And then we had heard that person was going to be like a co-game director with Tyler. And then we just that was just kind of a little bit too inside baseball for us to be reporting on. So we didn't talk about it last week, but now it seems like that's the replacement for Tyler. So wish him well in his next endeavors. And it'll be interesting to see. We're probably not going to see a lot of changes right away. We're going to feel the changes again maybe a year and a half out from whenever this new person comes in, just because of, again, how far in advance the team works. Maybe we'll see it in balance philosophy a little bit in the shorter term, but for the most part, it's all going to be like a year out when we see any of the impact from the new game director once they do come on.
Yes. And to clarify, the game director is different than the executive producer, right?
Yes.
As just for the listeners, I'm sure that there's overlap in all of these roles, right? And I don't have direct insight, but in terms of the general structure, right, the executive producer is the top person on the game underneath higher level people in the gaming division. And then each aspect of the game has its own director. So there's an art director and product, and marketing is its own thing, I think, right? Sounds and development, software. I don't know exactly what they're all called. So the game director is one of those, right, in charge of the game itself, like the gameplay. So again, I'm sure that like people at the top were all talking about this kind of thing, but it's not necessarily like we can say like, oh, Bielman is responsible for the Dark Moon fairs. Like we don't know that, and that wouldn't necessarily be what his role would generally be looking at. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be responsible for how it was implemented ultimately, but like the decision to like do a microtransaction thing like Dark Moon Fairs, we don't know, right? Like it could have been his idea, it could have not been. It doesn't really matter, and I don't think that this is necessarily like, he's putting this out there as his decision to move on. So that's where we're going to have to take it as.
Point out there was a couple people noting in the chat earlier that something else that has increased over the past couple of years is more stuff for free-to-play players. Like there's just been more events and more things given away. I think the more events is a plus and a minus. And again, do we know whether that was Tyler?
Yeah.
No. Who knows? But I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we don't know like what this means for the game, and we won't feel that. But yeah, wish him well with what he's doing. And I'm really hopeful that they can find someone who really understands and has a passion for card games.
Or I mean, Hearthstone specifically. Like Tyler was, he was a Magic designer in his former life. He was apparently responsible for a card called Isochron Scepter, which is kind of a notoriously broken card. Apparently, there was a post on Mark Rosewater's the lead designer for Magic, and there was some post from years ago where somebody was complaining about this card Isochron Scepter, and Mark Rosewater like called Tyler out by name as the person who was responsible for designing it. So yeah, it's again, that's just like a little bit of trivia that you can do with as you will. But yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah.
So that is it for news. And since that was a bunch of random stuff, why don't we talk about some more random stuff?
All right, so as we alluded to earlier, we were talking about RNG in this Dexplanations, inspired by Mug Shaman and 2 Rogue, or just Rogue in general, anything anyone is doing with Rogue right now. Even, there's other decks. It feels like there's quite a few decks with a lot of RNG elements in them right now. So we wanted to talk about a few things related to that, including like what is the state of RNG in the game right now? How can you deal with that as a person playing a deck with RNG? How can you deal with that as somebody playing against decks that have a lot of RNG? And manage your tilt around it, and then just like what are our thoughts about the level of RNG in the game in general right now. There is always, of course, some RNG in card games, even if only because of draw order, right? Card games are not chess, because you are going to be drawing your cards in a different order at a minimum, even if there was no other randomness to them. But of course, we have a lot of other RNG, right? There's generation. That's, I think, what we have the most of right now. Then there's also randomness of effect. So, like, for example, when you play Arcane Missiles, you don't know for sure what it's going to hit, and you have to manage those odds. Or like in Soothsayer, when your quest reward dies and it does 5 to a random enemy, you can't be sure whether it's going to hit face or not, stuff like that. But I think what we've really been seeing a lot of right now, if you've been playing card games for a while, you're very used to draw order RNG, you're used to effect RNG, right? Things like for Arcane Missiles, you want to improve your odds with trades before you cast it generally, unless you really have no idea, so you're going to cast it and then see where you need to trade things.
Yeah.
But
or you're building your deck around it, right? Like the fact that, like, we just talked about Soothsayer and things like Gumbra that are going to cast random death rattles. So you're trying to build your deck in a way that you have as few death rattles as possible, and the ones you're going to have are going to be very impactful. And then being aware of the things that can mess up your pool, because it is going to pull from randomness. And even like sometimes there are scenarios where you can spam more things into the pool to increase the odds of a particular effect, even if it's not the only thing in the pool. So, and a lot of the time there are decks, even like some of these decks that are built around getting a specific card, that's where tutors will come into play to kind of reduce that randomness for the draw RNG as well, right? So that's where with Soothsayer being so important and to be in your opening hand, why you're running Portal Guardians, why you're running Xavius, even Intertwined Fate as to a lesser extent, to make sure that you get it on time. So that if you have 30 cards in your deck, it's, a small percentage to draw one of the Soothsayers by, say, turn 3, I guess, is when you want to have it, so you can prepare it to be able to play it on turn 4. So I don't have a hypergeometric calculator in front of me, but I know that the odds are a lot more if you have more cards that can find it than if you're just running the 2 copies. So there's sometimes you'll see those things, some of those decks, or even the ones where you're running Egg Bearers in addition to Egg of Kalos, and then you have the second Egg of Kalos in order to make sure that you're getting one of them on curve or as close to on curve as possible. And then it feels really bad when those are all on the bottom of the deck and you don't get to draw them at all, because the deck doesn't work without that card.
Yeah, so there's ways that you can deck build or use other strategies to increase consistency, or with generation, when there's small pools and you're doing a lot of it, then you can be fairly certain that you're going to get something, or maybe there might be a few different redundant effects that you could generate that are all similar enough, right? Like the Excavates, there were several good defensive options in those. So you could be pretty certain you were going to get something useful to that effect. What I feel like we have a lot of right now, though, is just like a lot of random cards from large pools.
Yeah.
Either discovered out of large pools or just randomly generated out of large pools. You do get a mass of them, so that you sometimes see some of the same ones over again. Like I was seeing things from Blazing Invocation. You see, I've been playing a lot. I have been having fun and playing a lot. But you do start to see like, oh, that 3/2 that gives you a 5-drop is a really good thing to take off Blazing Invocation. But there are so many Battlecry minions that it is really different every game. That has a benefit. Like first, I give RNG generation its due. I think Discover, for example, has really been something that people loved in the original Ungoro, right? And it's been a key part of Hearthstone's history for a reason, right? It does add an extra decision where you have something that still is based on your knowledge of the game state, but also it changes a little bit game per game, so that it sort of tests more of your on your feet decision making. Like there is some skill testing aspects of this. You have to then know how this piece that I got, do I want to use it? How do I want to use it? I think it is something that a lot of people do like about Hearthstone, and we can see, for example, that the rogue is extremely popular. Mug Shaman is also extremely popular, but that's also probably because it's just so good. So We'll see what happens if/when they nerf it, and depending on how much they nerf it, I'm sure. But when there is so much randomness, I think it starts to be a little bit more like it is still testing your decisions on how do I use these things that I didn't anticipate, but it starts kind of devaluing another type of strategy, which is like, how do I really kind of like learn the ins and outs of this deck and like use that consistency to my advantage. And it can feel to the opponent very random, right? So on the opponent's side, there are strategies to playing against random stuff, in that like once you see it, you have to be able to respond to different things, but it makes it harder to do like the kind of gameplay that Wicked likes so much, and that I do too. I know what's in my opponent's deck, more or less, and I want to run them out of things, or if not that, then anticipate what they might play against me. And when they've generated a full hand of Vanessa Battlecries, you have no idea what might be coming your way. As well as, we were both talking about this, the Vanessa turns just take, so like after that point in the game, they take 70 seconds on every single turn and play like so many cards, and there's only so many times I can get up and get a snack. Like,
Yeah.
only so many snacks.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is that like half the cards don't matter either, because they're just junk that they're tossing to get something else out of Vanessa. Like, they're just prepping with no spell just to get another card out of Vanessa, right? And that's also kind of hard to just from an like information overload standpoint, if you're trying to follow exactly, and you should be, right? Like, you should be paying attention to what your opponent's doing on their turn, but it's like, it's very draining after a number of Vanessas to watch that and try to make sense out of all the stuff that's happening and all the animations going off and try to plan for your next turn at the same time. It's just like, it's a lot of cognitive overhead that gets involved with something like that. And trying to keep track of like, well, I mean, and Deck Tracker will help you, but it only does so much of like, oh, well, this is what they had. This card's been there on the left for a long time. This card was generated from this, so it could be this, that, or this. This I know was an Arcane Missiles because it was generated from the card that makes 3, but this was generated from this thing that just gives me a random minion. Okay, cool. That could be anything.
Yeah, so part of it is like when there's a few impactful things, like if I see them play Jade Guardians, I think those are going to be fewer cards that are more impactful. And I can probably expect, hey, they got some 8-drops, so maybe I should save my Shadow Word Ruin or look for it because there's probably going to be some big stuff, or I should prepare a taunt, or I should try to kill them this turn, right? Like, be like, there's going to be big 8-drops coming down soon, if not immediately. And so even though that's random and it's annoying when they get the exact one that it feels like they needed, it's not like Vanessa especially, or like the imbues from the rogue, if they're doing it every turn. I've been seeing imbue again on the rogues.
Yeah.
Is you should not try to track it, actually. Except for just a general, they have a lot of random minions that are cheap and they'll probably be playing them. Because a year or two ago, we talked about managing your cognitive load when playing Hearthstone. Those turns, if you are the player, you have to kind of be very quickly assessing, like, is this minion important to my game plan, or is it mere fodder? Is it mere, I'm just going to play it if it's mere fodder, right? And then not have it take up more room in your head. If you're the opponent, you're having to just kind of do the same thing. Okay, that was just a minion on the board. That was just a minion on the board. What you're really looking for is anything that's going to have more impact later. And sometimes I am somebody who likes to really pay attention when I'm playing. I don't listen to things. Sometimes I will be tabbing around and I inevitably perform worse if I am, except I have found on Vanessa turns, it's kind of okay to get up, come back, look at the state, and look at the history a little bit. I took a picture. I had one game that I did against a Vanessa rogue where I should have left earlier probably, so it's a little bit my fault, but I went to fatigue versus them. My deck tracker for their side was like filling the entire screen vertically, and then it kind of shrinks like Chrome tabs when you have too many Chrome tabs open. So it looked like I had opened like 100 Chrome tabs because they were just like tiny little boxes for every card they generated, and it puts like a little gift symbol on each one that wasn't in their deck, so there's like gift symbols all the way down. I posted that in the salt mine, like, why is this the experience of playing with or against rogue? I think one thing that can help, you have to just kind of know that they might have anything, and so in a way not play around it as much, because just like they might have anything. If I put elusive on my Soothsayer, they are less likely to be able to deal with it, but they might still be able to deal with it. But just like, what are things that are more likely to get my game plan for the general category of they probably have a bunch of minions to vomit on the board, stuff like that, because you can no longer play around specific cards, really. Maybe if it's like versus Shaman, you can play around like Hex specifically if you think that they're running it. I guess that's a bad example because they're not always running it right now. Or if you're playing against a Hunter, you can definitely... It's like the difference of when you're playing against a Hunter, you know that they're going to get some random 5-drops, but those are just like big minions, and they're going to get a bunch of arcane tripwires, and they're going to replay everything with Confront the Tol'vir that is pretty predictable in that it does damage to you, refills their board, refills their hand. That's a very different experience of playing against Rogue, where you're like, something's going to happen. it feels a lot like I found myself getting very tilted against Rogue because I'll be like, it feels like they had the only thing. Everything they get is unlikely. So you're like, they got so lucky. They got exactly what they needed. But there were probably many outcomes that would have been exactly what they needed. It's just impossible to think of all of them. It's kind of impossible to know what the odds actually were. But I think just remembering, like, they always get something really unlikely. That's how the deck works.
Yeah. But also, you do make your own luck to some extent, right? Like, part of what's going on with those decks is that you're setting yourself up for where a lucky roll can win you the game or get you out of a situation. And part of it is also understanding like when you have multiple things that are going to generate something that's random, what it is that's most likely to get you something that's going to either win or get you out of it, right? Which is understanding what's in the pools. Like, if I'm playing Jade Guardians, I mean, like, if you're, especially for like, if you're looking, like, here's a great example is like, if you're playing against a Rogue and they play Jade Guardians, let's say that they've fully discounted it, right? The Aatrops cost 0 and they have an empty board and they only play 1, right? There's a pretty small universe of what that could be because most of what you're expecting out of Jade Guardians are big, dumb idiots that might do something, right? Like, maybe you get a Draco Rex and it clears a board. Maybe you get an Illidari Inquisitor and you probably don't have a hero power at that point, so you can't necessarily do anything. But like, the number of things that they're not just going to insta slam are going to be pretty small, and they're probably going to be something like Acina, but they haven't killed enough minions, right? Because Acina is like a 6/8, which is not terrible, but Rogue's going to get to kill 20 minions. And it's a lot better if it's doing the 20 damage when you play it, so they might hold on to it. Like, Entomologist Toru would be one that if they're sitting on the one that does all the damage, and Entomologist Taru turns it into a 0/1 that gets summoned instead of played, then they're not going to want to play that, right? But there's not that many of those, so you can kind of do some inference. But again, it involves understanding what's in the pool, and sometimes that requires playing the deck to get a sense for that too. I mean, I say this a lot and this is ultimately why I played Rogue last week to Legend, because I really wanted to understand the deck because I was seeing it a lot and I was getting kind of frustrated and I felt like I needed to demystify it. That kind of helps you understand when you're playing against it. Like, what are the kinds of things that they're likely to get? Like, if you are seeing somebody Blazing Invocation on 1 and they don't play the thing right away, what the hell is that? Right? Because Blazing Invocation is like, it's giving you a 3 mana discount on turn 1 effectively. So it's something that costs more than 3, which either means that everything they got offered was super expensive. There's a lot of cheap battle cries. That's unlikely. Or they got real greedy and they took something that they think is going to be able to help them later. And like, what could that be? Right? I mean, honestly, if they're doing that, you're probably winning because they're giving up their main advantage in the matchup for some potential value later, which is not how you win with that deck. Because if the game goes later, you're probably not winning. Because like, your average card quality, that's the secret about Mug Shaman, is that you really do need to close early. Like, it's not strictly an aggro deck, but it kind of is, because the longer that you go into the game, the less that the discount matters, and the more that you end up like stuck with jank that you need to do stuff with. Like, the early cards early in the game, it doesn't really matter what the minion is because it's bigger than it's supposed to be that early, and it can just snowball if the opponent can't deal with it, especially if you have a couple of them. If the game goes later, like, you're only getting 1 discount a turn, and you're getting a it's kind of like going to the dollar store. Like, you're getting a discount, but it's on something that's worse than if you just went in and bought the regular thing at regular price, right? Like, you know, like they do those like half size soap bars or whatever that they sell for $1. Like, you could just go and pay twice as much and get the real size soap bar. So like
Yeah.
that's something else that you just like, it's a matter of understanding, like when you're playing against it, like how much are those things actually going to matter? What could they be? And like, how do you address it knowing what is left in their hand after all the random generation has happened?
And what's the like general category that we're going to have? So like back when people were playing a lot of Firac, exactly what Firac was going to do was pretty much unpredictable. But the general category of what Firac was going to do was that pick 2, clear the board, draw cards, deal face damage, right? Like you weren't certain that it would do all 3 of these things, but it would probably do at least like 2 of them to some extent, especially when it casts 20 mana versus spells. And especially back before, like at first it was pretty reliable at clearing the board and actually didn't do that much face damage. But like in general, we had a sense of like, this is probably what Firac's going to do. If I'm really ahead, I'm not going to do it. But if I'm behind, it's probably great. Or if I'm so ahead that it doesn't matter if it bricks, then it's probably great. But like just keeping track as the opponent also of like, oh, they could just like magic clear my board with Firac. So sometimes you play around that and sometimes it's correct not to play around that. I think with something like the Mug Shaman, you just assume they're going to have some big dumb stuff early. If they happen to get like an Illidari Inquisitor on 4, like I did, you probably weren't winning that game. But most of the time, they don't get an Illidari Inquisitor on 4, but they do get some big dumb stuff early, and you have to be prepared for that. And weathering that is like goal number 1, and not using your, so either depending on what type of deck you're playing, you're fighting for the board, or you're waiting until you can clear it, or whatever deck you're playing, or you're trying to build a counter board. I don't know what the Rogue versus Mug Shaman thing is from the Rogue's perspective, but probably just out wide them.
Yeah, I think you're just trying to flash back and then use some of your removal and try to just use your early spells to keep them in check until you can, because your value is generally better as the game goes on. So you're basically just trying to survive the early turns, deal with their early boards, and then get to a point where your stuff is better. And ideally just get into Jade Guardians, because Jade Guardians is always good. Like by the time that the Rogue is playing it, it's almost always the result of it's going to be good, because 8 drops are good in general. Like there are very few whiffs, and even the whiffs are like, well, fine, I got a vanilla minion. It's like they're like I already talked about the ones that can actively screw you, or at least like not even screw you. Like Toru is kind of an outlier because that's the only one that really can actually screw you. The only one of the ones that are even like below average is like Archwitch Willow, which is just a 5/5, or like, oh, I guess Hogwaggle can screw you. That's the other one that can screw you. But those are it. And like, okay, then I just get like, I get a 7/12 on their turn with lifesteal that can't attack, or that doesn't attack for damage. That's fine. Like, or I get something that like blows up 1 minion when I play it. That's okay for 2 mana or 0 mana. You're completely okay with that. Like maybe Mr. Clocksworth is bad just because random legendaries are hard to roll, right? But even that's not terrible.
Even that's a board in a box.
Yeah. So like, that if they're playing Jade Guardians, and like, especially if you're the Rogue, you want to get to Jade Guardians, because like whatever you're going to get is going to be good. So you don't necessarily need to worry about that. And like, you kind of need to go into it with a short memory, because it will screw you occasionally. And like, you just need to, take that as it will. Like, it's the problem with RNG mentally in general is that I think I want to say this is an actual statistic. I'm pretty sure I read it in a book and it could be made up, but that you're like 3 times as you're going to remember a loss like 3 times more than a gain, right? So you're going to have all these good rolls that are going to go in and out of your memory immediately. And the one time that Jade Guardians gives you Togwaggle and Toru together, you are going to want to, like, you're going to wish that card was physical so you could go take a lighter and burn it. And that's the kind of thing that you need to be able to just say, okay, I low rolled, it happened. And some of those games are going to get decided by that, and it sucks. But you need to play enough games with something like that so that the averages even out. And because on average, Jade Guardians is an incredible card, but every so often it will screw you, and that's kind of a live by the sword, die by the sword type of mentality you need to have.
And that can be something where taking a minute to think about it when it does something amazing can actually maybe be helpful, because then you're reinforcing, like, sometimes it does these incredible things, right? Like, I'll take a screenshot or something and then look back at it. Or just if you use a tracker, sometimes if I feel like I've been losing all the time, sometimes I look back at the tracker and I have been losing a bunch, and then I say, all right, I should take a break. But sometimes I'll feel like I've been losing a bunch. I look at the tracker and I'm even or positive, and it's like, okay, I just got tilted by this particular game. It's also important to remember, like, just because something didn't work out doesn't necessarily mean it was the wrong play, right? Like, if you played Jade Guardians and you got Entomologist Toru and Togwaggle, it was still probably correct to play Jade Guardians. I think that one's more obvious, but sometimes it can be a little bit like, if you're trying to decide which of my RNG things is going to bail me out, right? You just have to go by averages at that point, because you don't necessarily know for sure. Like, you want to go for the expected value, right? Rather than you won't always get the expected value. But in Hearthstone, we play enough games, or we can play enough games, that we end up over time with the expected value. The expected value, of course, being sort of the weighted average of everything that could happen. And, you can do things like do random things first if possible. If you know that you're gonna draw, obviously draw first. Old advice that I still will forget and then go, darn it, right? Like, that is a form of RNG. What am I gonna draw? It's an unknown. Make that known before you finish your turn, if possible. Sometimes for whatever, ordering reason, it's not. But if you're gonna have something that hits randomly, decide whether you're gonna reduce its sample space by killing some things first. Do that if you're going to, then do it, then see what happens, right? Before making other decisions that might depend on that. Or if you're going to generate something, if you're playing Undeath Sentence and Soothsayer and there's more than one thing it could hit, start with that, stuff like that. Also, start your turn a little earlier if there's going to be random stuff happening. You cannot plan your whole turn, so start it, then plan. And certainly if you're doing a Vanessa turn, as I'm sure everyone knows, you just got to go. Like, the perfect is the enemy of the good at that point. You're just looking for what is a good play, and then we're going to go with it. Or what is, with Vanessa, really anything I can afford. Throw on the board.
Which cards are green? Let's play those. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about playing the green card. And just having sort of good heuristics of, like, what is the matchup and my role in it? Am I looking in general for, like, if I'm playing Mug Shaman, I'm looking for impactful cards now, usually, unless there's something like really spicy, maybe go for the grittier thing. Or am I playing a little bit more of a control game, like when I was playing the Soothsayer Priest and looking at, like, is it worth taking this 2/4 dragon that'll draw me my Medivh's Triumph? Well, I just need to survive versus this deck, so yes, it is worth taking that, because I'm not going to be needing my Umbra to do better things. Knowing your role in the matchup can help you kind of just get a general, this seems like the right discover choice, or this seems like the right random thing out of the 50 million random things I have in my hand to play, when you only have 70 seconds for your turn and you can't, like, possibly, like, chess out everything that's gonna happen, especially because they're gonna generate random stuff too, so you couldn't chess it out even if you wanted to. I don't think chess is a verb, but I just made it one.
And I think the other thing that, and I am as guilty of this as anybody, it is very easy, both when playing with or against a heavy RNG deck, to say, screw it, nothing matters, I'm just going to wing it, right? And then throw out all the rest of, like, if you were playing, like, against another deck and they had both very linear game plans, and you were, like, thinking about it and thinking about what you're going to play lineup answers to, or what are they likely to play, so what should I play, thinking about that. And it is very easy when you are playing against something like a Mug Shaman to just say, screw it, nothing matters, and completely throw out that part of the game. And to some extent, you don't want to think too hard, but you also don't want to just completely give up on that piece of your analysis, right? You still want to be taking into account, like, what's the worst thing that they could do? And that's harder when the constellation of things that they could do is very wide. But, like, you kind of get a sense out after playing against a Mug Shaman, like what's the worst thing that they could have on 4 mana, right? Maybe you don't know off the top of your head, but you kind of have an idea, and like just play against that. Assume that they're going to do that and think about it ahead of time, or at least play around the cards that you know are in the deck. Play around the heralds, right? Like, okay, well, at least I know that they can rush in for 4 damage with 3 mana if they want to. So maybe I play around that, just as an example. But it is very easy to just say, well, nothing matters, so I'm not gonna think too hard. And you may not be wrong in some cases, but you're still going to end up letting yourself slip into bad habits that way, which is going to hurt you even when you're not playing against those decks. If you kind of play against a bunch of those and then you just get used to not thinking about other people's turns or checking out and going to watch a YouTube video on their turns because nothing that they're doing matters. Like, there's something to be said for like the Vanessa turn specifically. Like, yeah, that might be a good time to check out and just kind of figure out what it is when they get back, just because there's so much going on and it's too hard to keep up with. But not every turn is a Vanessa turn, and they're not playing that many cards, and it can be very easy to turn that into an excuse for I don't need to pay attention on their turn, which is going to both lead you to be losing more because you're not following good habits, and then also blaming the RNG more because, oh, of course they had it because they got this card, and maybe that card was good. Maybe that card wouldn't have been a blowout if you had been paying attention to the other things that were going on in that game and playing around some of them.
Yeah, as usual with playing around, there's the play around it if you can afford to, don't play around it if you can't.
At least considering it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so, consider it. Like, if the shaman might have Hex, I do play around Hex. But if I'm gonna lose, even if they don't have Hex, if I play around it, I'm just gonna put my Soothsayer out, and then if they Hex it, I concede.
Yeah, like you're playing around the shaman having Hex. You're not playing around the rogue getting Hex off of Sands of Time. That's the difference.
Yeah, you play around things that you know that they might have, or categories of things that they're likely to have. They're probably gonna have a bunch of small minions. They're probably gonna have some rush. They're probably gonna have some direct face damage, right? Because they have that deal 4 damage, give your elementals +1/+1 spell. They also have, I feel like they have something else that does, they have the spell that turns into a minion that does 4 damage. So like you can assume they have some 4 damage things. So maybe don't get like 8 health if you can, right? There are things that you can think about when you're planning your turn, even though you don't know exactly what they're going to get. It's also easy to be like, well, they got this nuts thing, so of course they won. And sometimes that's true, like the Illidari Inquisitor. But sometimes, like, they were making decisions too, right? Like, if you play the RNG heavy decks, there are some games that feel like there was the gift from God upon you. But there are lots of other games where you did have to make decisions. I do think, personally, I wish there was a little bit less of the RNG generation in the game right now. But it's not... it's easy to dismiss as completely unskill testing when I don't think that is true.
Yeah.
It is a somewhat different kind of skill testing that may or may not appeal to you. And I think my preference on that is to have some, but not nearly so much. But it's a style of play.
Yeah.
That I think, like many other popular styles of play, has its pros and cons.
I think the problem is just that there's too many of those right now all at the same time, and they're all good, right? Like the rogue, I mean, Vanessa is kind of everywhere. Or it's not everywhere, but the rogue deck is really the only one that's really running Vanessa, but that's very popular. And that's also just kind of doing a bunch of other generation type stuff anyway, because it is generally running a bunch of the imbue stuff, which is also generating random stuff. And you're running Thieves Tools and you're running Vanessa, and it's got a bunch of that. Like Mug Shaman is just all the minions are generated. That's the way that the deck more or less has to be in order to get minions, is they have to be generated. So there's a lot of that that's also there. And when those are a lot of the meta, right? And even like the Pure Paladin, when you see it, right? Like the Pure Paladin that's running the Scarlet Crusaders.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting the name wrong. Whatever, the 2-drop that's generating a random Paladin card.
Scarlet Bruiser, I think.
Scarlet Bruiser, yeah. Like that's also going to be a lot of generation because it's just doing that. It's also got the 4-drop that gives you a holy spell at the end of the turn. That's random. Like there's just it can feel bad because there's a lot of it, and a lot of the decks seem to lean on that. There are decks that don't, but even the ones that don't still do a little bit. Like the Soothsayer Priest has got some random effects, and even like sometimes the Portal Vanguard will draw you Umbra twice when you desperately need a Soothsayer because you haven't had one die yet. And it's like that old Captain Picard quote. You can. Oh God, I'm blanking on it because I've used it so much that it's actually gone out of my. Or it's like I think it's you can do everything right and still lose, and that's not a failing. That is life. I think that's what the quote is. I may have butchered it, but I'm fairly sure that that's the quote. And it is harder to take, and sometimes you just need to take a break, right? Like sometimes you'll get a bad beat. Like there was one game that I had with the Rogue that I might have made somebody uninstall where I was playing against a paladin. No, a druid, I'm sorry. And I had a full board full of just giant things. I had a Grom. I'd played like a bunch of Jade Guardians. And I had a really wide board, and they played the dragon that made everything one attack, and they were at comfortably more than 7 health, and they had a Doomsayer on board. So basically I'm either going to have to spend the entire turn killing off their Doomsayer or just take 7 damage and then they clear my board. And I had one of those minions was Grom that had 1 attack, and I had a Judgment in hand. And I ran the Grom into one of the minions, made it 7 attack, played Judgment, and then ran them over. But that was something that I had to spot that, right? I had to realize that the Grom was going to, remember that the Grom was going to be able to get back up, to a high attack after that. And then realize how I could leverage that with the Judgment in my hand, which is not a card that you see often. I have no idea how I got it. It must have been, it must have been off of the spell. God damn it.
I don't think it was Thieves' Tools even.
Or I somehow got like a Scarlet Bruiser from them or something. I don't know how it happened, but I did it. And I'm sure that they were pretty upset about that after that game, because that was a pretty brutal way to lose that game. But also that just kind of is going to happen, and you're going to get those things happening to you. Like I actually forgot that until we were just talking about it, because I posted a link to that replay in our chat. But that's the kind of thing where it's all going to even out in the end, probably. But it's going to feel like it doesn't if you're not keeping up with your fundamentals and playing, deliberate Hearthstone and just taking the mentality that everything is random, so nothing matters, and I'm just gonna play randomly and see what happens. Then you're playing a slot machine, and then in that case, the odds are in the casino's favor, not yours.
Right. There's a reason why when my husband plays the game, he is pretty good. Once he's played a deck for a while, he can kind of get a sense of like, this is what my deck can do. And he knows like general categories of things that might happen. They might clear, so maybe I should keep something back in case they clear. But he doesn't play enough because it's not his priority. He doesn't play enough to have any real sense of like, what exactly might they have, or like really unusual interactions that come up, or like I know that I saw that they had this thing and they're going to be able to resurrect it or something, and that loses him a lot of games. But then he, it keeps him at an MMR where his opponents are also not seeing stuff like that often, so he can surprise them with things. You're getting at high MMR when your predictable deck is no longer surprising people. Like, yeah. If I go down to a lower MMR, I'll sometimes get into bad habits where I expect certain misplays from my opponents.
Yeah.
And then my reward, if I do really well, I start being like, well, if they're really smart, they'll do this, but I bet they don't. And then they always do the thing that I don't want them to do.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, you have to be, but at the same time, it's like, you can also get into that. Well, we're going to do this thing that is probably bad, but it's going to be good if they do the thing that's logical. And then they do not do the thing that's logical, but it's also, because that's something that you would expect a higher MMR player to do. and it's something that a low MMR player just is never going to do. So then sometimes you end up actually hurting yourself by doing that instead of just putting yourself in their mindset. But also, it's still better to be, especially when you're coaching a player who's not as skilled, to kind of have them understand what the thought process is, even if it's wrong for the opponents that they're facing.
I have a quick story on this. I'm sorry if I've told this before. I used to love playing the game Coup, which is like a bluffing game where you have two different hidden role cards, but you can pretend you have any role card. But if you pretend you have something you don't have, people can call you out. But then if they're wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, a typical bluffing game. It's very fun. And I played it with the same group of people a bunch. And we were all kind of like into game theory, and there was a specific kind of culture about how we played. And I think it was pretty optimal in a game theory sense. Right. Everybody would play according to what seemed logical to them. And like near the end of the game, they would call you out if like on average it was going to be better for them, right? Like they would think like a few like, if this, then that's. And the social contract was you're not allowed to get mad at somebody if they're doing the optimal position for themselves at that moment in the game. And that was just so understood that people wouldn't politic it that much. Well, then I played Coup with a group of like people who I had never really played games with before, including one of my friends who was on a first or second date with somebody. And she's...
Yes, let's play a game where you lie on a first or second date. That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, it was maybe not a great plan. And I just like, without thinking, assumed that I knew what she was going to do, because the logical thing for her to do would be to call out the guy she was on a date with because he was clearly lying. And if she called him out, then I would win because of something she couldn't know that I had. Right? Well, obviously she did not do that. Even though I was like, hey, you do realize, like I even said, I was like, hey, you do realize he's probably lying about that. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to call him out. And so I lost. And the guy won. I'm a little salty because that guy turned out to be so annoying. But anyway, this part was not his fault. Other things were his fault. Maybe I'll do that in the post show.
So the lesson is don't play random Hearthstone decks on a first or second date. That's the lesson.
That is the lesson from this story. Yeah, I've gone a little off the rails now, but I think overall, honestly, with mind game stuff, I think the lesson is like don't overthink it. At a certain point, like you do want to think about what they might have. You do want to think about their likely plays, but don't go like 3 levels deep. Like it's not like the Matrix. Like, oh, usually the best play would be this because they probably have that. But if they know that I have this, then they're actually going to do this. And then if they know that, then they're like, stop at level 1. It's okay.
Yeah. If you're on the Masters Tour, then you can go down to that level. On ladder, don't. Like maybe if you're playing at like top 50, then you can start having those conversations with yourself. In general, at most ranks, people are just going to do the level 1 thing, and they're not going to be, if they were going to be leveling you that much, they'd be a much higher MMR than they are in general.
And yeah. And even the high MMR players do make mistakes sometimes. Yeah. I can tell you for sure. When you're watching the pro players, sometimes they make mistakes. Now they're under a huge amount of pressure. Right. But like, sometimes people make mistakes. And I think we were having a conversation in the Neurodivergence channel about just like general mindset when playing recently. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that you are not learning if you're not making mistakes. Educators call this the proximal zone of development. It's kind of an obvious thing when you hear about it, but like it's a good thing to have a name for. The proximal zone of development is the zone where you are actually going to learn. So it's the Goldilocks zone between I know everything here, so it's too easy, and I don't know anything that's going on, so I'm completely confused. If you have no idea what's happening, you aren't going to learn anything. I think everybody's had that happen. If you get dropped into multivariate calculus and you're in Algebra 1, nothing is going to happen. But also, if you're in Algebra 1 and you get dropped into like, let's add things, assuming that you learned how to add things, then you're probably not learning anything if you're just getting them all correct, right? Like 3 plus 4 is 7. Hopefully, you're not learning anything at that point when you're in Algebra 1. But in general, if you're not making any mistakes, you're not at the proximal zone of development. And the way that Hearthstone is set up is to pit you against players who are at a similar proximal zone of development, which, by the way, is not always, it's not a one-to-one with your rank. Just because you're playing at a certain rank doesn't necessarily mean you're at a certain MMR. You can't really tell that for sure until you're at Legend. And there is some like variability in people's Legend ranks, but in general,
there's also variability in how in how well people are playing on any given day. That's not necessarily aligned with their rank either. Like,
right.
This is like a mental game of poker thing where you have your A game, your B game, and your C game, and they can be very different depending on like your mental state and like how awake you are and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's another thing to remember too, and give yourself grace. You're not going to be on your A game all the time, right? So like being a good player, quote unquote, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably care about being a good player. But being a good player does not mean you never make mistakes. Being a good player does not mean you're always on your A game, right? Part of being a good player is playing even though you're making mistakes and trying to learn from them, unless you're really not learning from them, and then take a break, right? Or you're like, whatever, I really want to play Mill Paladin. You do you. But
I definitely did learn something. I did. I learned I shouldn't be playing that deck.
It's not only that it's impossible to like never lose and like there is RNG and one game doesn't define you. That's all true, but also like that's not even what being a good player means or what learning in the game involves. So I think that can be helpful to keep in mind sometimes. Now, that doesn't feel fun when you're in the middle of losing. And students hate it, by the way, when teachers are like, mistakes are part of the process. I get it. I understand that is one of the most annoying things that I say to students. But it is true. Anyway, let's gone a little past RNG into...
Yeah. Well, I mean, RNG and like mental state kind of end up going hand in hand in a certain point because it can be very easy for RNG to lead to tilt. So I think understanding what's happening and being able to like intercept it also can help you from getting tilted, which will lead you to playing worse, which will lead to getting more tilted by RNG, and then you end up spiraling, right? So don't spiral. That's easy. Just don't. That's my advice for you. Don't spiral. There you go.
There's one of my husband's like favorite YouTube clips is this sketch. I can't remember if it's an SNL sketch or not, like an old SNL. Somebody comes in to the doctor and is explaining their like obsessionalism and like intrusive thoughts, like basically OCD type stuff, and how they're really anxious and blah, blah, blah. And the doctor's like, well, stop it. And the person's like, well, but I feel like if I don't wash my hands, then I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die. Well, then don't do that. Just stop it. Just stop. Is it helping you? No. Then stop it. And of course, it's like, that is not how the world works. But something that you can do is like, try just stopping it and see if it helps. Because sometimes it doesn't help. If one could just not be anxious, none of us would be anxious, and it would be great. But there are times when you can just be like, you know what? I can't just will myself into not being tilted right now, but I can like not play. And then I can reframe things for myself when I'm feeling a little better, right? Like there are things that you can stop, even though there are other things that are not totally under your voluntary control. Your immediate emotional reaction, not under your control. How you respond to your immediate emotional reaction is under your control to some extent.
Yeah.
This is what happens when everybody in your life is works in the mental health field.
Yeah. You get real logical about things that aren't very logical, I guess.
Which doesn't mean I don't get tilted, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. I have been better about not yelling at the screen this season than I have in past times with RNG. So that's something, at least. I am practicing what I preach a little bit. But, and if I get salty, then I go play some more trails and then I feel better. So
there you go. That's the real moral of the story is you should go play Trails in the Sky.
Yes. Anyhow, that's going to do it for this week. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Make sure to check out the About Us section on the website at coincede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. You can join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. You can join our community chats on our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. You can write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Blue Sky at coinconcede. You can subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/@coinconcede. And if you've gotten this far in the video on YouTube, make sure to like, and I don't know what hyping does, but sure, do that too. That would be great. And if you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. And that will bring us to Coin Concedes. I think we both thank you, Contig, for the sub during the stream. We both are going to Coin Concede to Edel, and hopefully the smoke will dissipate in extremely short order, ideally before having to cast Masters Tour this weekend. And other than that, Magesa, what are your Coin Concedes this week?
My Coin Concedes, thank you to Yubnub and just a lot of A's in a row, for their friendly ads, both times after beating me. But it does feel better if you beat me and then nicely compliment me on the show than if you just beat me. So actually, did they beat me or did I beat them? Either way, it might have been 1-1. I appreciate hearing from people. It's always nice to hear from people. Also, there was kind of an amazing story about Firestone, which I don't use because it's not on Mac. I don't have like a position on the deck trackers except for that Firestone is not on Mac, so I can't use it. And Hearthstone deck tracker works well for me. But apparently somebody had like hacked Firestone and put up like a hacked version of it that you could access the subscription version without paying.
Oh, that's not good.
The Firestone dev had made a post like asking the community not to do that and for help. And not only did they get it says, after mentioning that Firestone got pirated, I got an overwhelming number of support messages from the community, especially people from China, some of them even offering me to help make Firestone better. That was heartwarming, and I was moved by such support. The initial author of the hack also contacted me, apologized, and took down their server.
Wow.
I must admit that I didn't expect that, and I have a deep respect for this kind of very humane and humble behavior. Again, thank you. That's a pretty incredible story.
Yeah, there are actually good people in the world. Imagine, like, yeah, that's pretty good. Mine is not quite so serious or heartwarming, for that matter. But I'm gonna Coin Concede to Solarian Community College, which yes is a Magic YouTube channel, but they had Raren on playing Commander, and also Voxy, who is a Magic streamer, but she is also known for what was the name of the weasel? The weasel card.
The weasel card with the hat.
With the hat, yeah. Anyway, the weasel card with the hat from like Mean Streets of Gadgets and like forever ago. She came into it and like when she was playing like solo content, and then that was like, she's a Magic streamer, but she's more known for her Hearthstone, like the 2 months that she was playing Hearthstone than like for Magic, I guess. I don't know if it's more known, but those were her most popular clips. So they kept referring to her as a Hearthstone streamer throughout this entire episode, but they also had one of the other players in the game had a soul ring which was altered with the art of the Hearthstone coin, which was very cool. And they also had built their deck in a way that they were going to try to kill people with the Hearthstone coin. So it was very funny. It was a very entertaining episode. Even if you don't really follow Commander all that often, you'll pick up enough if you play enough card games. It was Weasel Tunneler. Thank you, Contic. Weasel Tunneler is the name of the card.
And she is very entertaining, I will say, as is Baron, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Covert Go Blue was also on that episode. He's also very entertaining. So it's a good watch. You can just put it on the background, and if you pick up anything, fine. If not, fine. But it was funny you get to hear Voxy scream a lot, which is also just entertaining enough as it is. Yeah, so that's gonna do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and go generate some random numbers. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.